In the 1950s, a mysterious astrologer appeared in Japan, capturing public attention. That person was none other than the famous Fuja Kotto. She claimed that at the age of 9, she had been possessed by a Hawaiian fox spirit, which granted her telepathic abilities. She became famous for accurately predicting major events in Japan, as well as the assassination of South Korean President Park Chung-hee, making her a sensation at the time. However, despite her ability to foresee the fate of others, she seemingly couldn't predict her own destiny. In 1994, an event occurred that remains shrouded in mystery even decades later. What happened that year? What questions remain unanswered? Let's travel back in time to February 23, 1994, to uncover the truth. It was a Wednesday afternoon. At 2:55 p.m., at Central Pacific Bank in Honolulu, Hawaii, the bank's president received a phone call. The caller was Kotto, speaking in an urgent tone, demanding that the bank send her $20,000 in cash. The bank president was shocked and urged her to calm down. He explained that the bank couldn't send money like that, as it violated their regulations, but rather than calming down, Kotto became even more distressed. Her voice grew louder and she insisted, "This is a matter of life and death." She also asked him to explain the situation in Japanese so that someone beside her could understand. However, before the bank president could ask further questions, the call was suddenly cut off. This strange phone call left the bank president deeply puzzled. The situation seemed urgent, but since he didn't have Kotto's contact number, he immediately called the Japanese consulate. After learning about the situation, the Japanese consulate repeatedly called Kotto, but no one answered. Growing concerned, they decided to send someone to her apartment to check on her. Fuja Kotto was a Japanese national. She had lived in Japan for over 30 years before moving to Hawaii. When asked why she chose Hawaii, she laughed and said she didn't know. Sometimes people just feel drawn to a place, and so she had lived there for over 20 years. Her apartment was located on Ala Moana Boulevard in Honolulu, Hawaii. She lived in a luxurious high-rise condominium near the beach, next to a major shopping center, offering a stunning ocean view. Many celebrities also lived in the building. When Japanese consulate staff arrived at her apartment, they were shocked to see black smoke billowing from inside. They tried to open the door to save her, but it wouldn't budge. As the flames grew larger, they realized the situation was dire and immediately called emergency services. At 5 p.m., firefighters arrived and extinguished the fire. Inside, they found 56-year-old Kotto in the bedroom. She was curled up inside a closet, her mouth gagged with cloth, and unconscious. Despite efforts to save her, she could not be revived. News of her death spread rapidly, causing a major shock. Kotto was well known in Japan and had connections with many famous figures, making the case instantly attract massive public attention. The forensic report revealed disturbing details. Her body had 9 wounds, concentrated on the upper half of her body. Her neck had rope marks, suggesting she had been strangled. There was hemorrhaging in her eyelids, a sign of asphyxiation. The fatal wound was a gunshot to the chest, fired at close range. Based on the analysis of these injuries, investigators determined that Kotto had likely died before the fire started. The police conducted a thorough examination of the apartment. They found a bullet hole on a blood-stained pillow in the bedroom, and the jewelry box on the nightstand appeared to have been rummaged through, with several valuables missing. Based on the burn patterns in the apartment, the perpetrator had used a flammable liquid, spreading it in 2 different corners of the room before setting the fire. Many pieces of evidence had been destroyed by the flames, making the investigation even more difficult. Kotto had been famous since childhood for her telepathic abilities, widely regarded as a child prodigy. She frequently appeared in the media and was admired by many. Her books were bestsellers, and by the 1960s, before she even turned 30, she already owned 5 cars and a private airplane, luxuries far beyond the reach of the average person. Many people wondered, Kotto was an astrologer who successfully predicted major events, so why couldn't she foresee her own fate? According to research, she was born in Fukuoka City, Fukuoka Prefecture. As a child, her parents divorced, and she grew up during wartime chaos. At the age of 9, she claimed that she had been possessed by a Hawaiian fox spirit, which granted her supernatural abilities. By 11, she appeared in the media as a child prodigy, astrologer, and a girl with the heavenly eye, becoming a widely recognized figure at the time. While living in Japan, she got married, but the marriage lasted only 3 years before ending in failure. At one point, she managed a sauna, but due to facility issues, a fire broke out, killing 3 people. She was convicted of negligent manslaughter and sentenced to 10 months in prison, suspended for 3 years. This incident led some people to question her psychic abilities, arguing that her predictions were merely coincidences and lucky guesses. Despite this, Kototomi remained highly influential, offering astrological services and consultations to many prominent political and business figures, including Japanese Prime Minister Fukuda Yasuo and business mogul Matsushita Konosuke. Her supporters believed that telepathic abilities were a divine gift meant to help others, not oneself, explaining why she could not predict her own fate. The police investigation continued. They attempted to contact Kototomi's closest relative, her adopted son, Fujita Goro. However, something strange happened. Goro was missing. Based on the existing clues, the police formulated a hypothesis. Goro had been kidnapped, and the abductors demanded ransom from his adoptive mother. When negotiations failed, they killed Kototomi. If that was the case, then where was Goro? On the night of the incident, at 10:30 p.m. in the parking lot of the Halekulani Hotel, approximately 3 miles from Kototomi's apartment, a bellhop heard a car alarm going off. Following the sound, he discovered a red sports car engulfed in flames in the parking lot. Firefighters quickly arrived and extinguished the fire. Inside, in the passenger seat, they found a body wrapped in white fabric, lifeless. The victim was confirmed to be Kototomi's adopted son, 20-year-old Fujita Goro. The forensic report revealed that the victim's face had bruises and multiple injuries, with the fatal wound being a gunshot to the chest. His wrists and ankles had adhesive marks, indicating that he had been bound before his death. Inside the burned car, police discovered 2 pieces of light-colored fabric, suspected to be from a bed sheet or mattress, along with a gas canister and a pair of half-burned cotton gloves. They also collected several strands of hair and fabric fibers from the victim's body for forensic analysis. Police questioned the Fujita family's housekeeper. He explained that the day of the incident had been his day off, so he had no knowledge of what happened in the apartment. Although Kototomi was a famous public figure, she was known for being friendly and humble. She rarely had conflicts with others, except for some financial disputes with her adopted son, Goro. At the time, Goro was 20 years old, a cheerful, sociable young man who was very generous with his spending. He allowed his friends to freely use his bank card and frequently treated them to meals and entertainment. Since he was a college student, he often ran out of money and asked his mother for financial support. Over time, these frequent requests led to arguments between them. With both mother and son murdered on the same day and the crime scenes showing similar methods, police suspected that both murders were committed by the same perpetrator, likely motivated by money. 2 days after the crime, a sanitation worker found a brown paper bag in a trash bin at Eaton Square. Inside, police discovered Goro's identification documents, credit cards, a men's diving watch, a women's wallet, a gold women's watch, and other valuables. Shortly after, police made another discovery near the Alawai Canal. In the trunk of a pickup truck, they found another brown paper bag containing the Fujita family's passports, a wallet with Kototomi's driver's license and Japanese yen, a men's ring, a coin purse, multiple credit cards, and other items. Inside the wallet, police also found a checkbook containing 31 $100 bills and 11 10,000 yen notes. As news of the case spread, many reporters arrived at the crime scene. One journalist, noticing the ransacked jewelry box, speculated on camera that the stolen jewelry might have been sold at a pawn shop. Following this lead, police immediately investigated local pawn shops. As expected, they found the missing jewelry from Kototomi's apartment in a pawn shop just 300 meters from the apartment. The shop employee stated that a Japanese man had brought in the jewelry on the day after the crime, February 24th. The man visited the pawn shop 3 times, selling the jewelry for nearly $20,000. At the time, the suspect even presented his passport, and the shop owner vividly remembered him, not only recognizing that he was Japanese, but also remembering his name. Through their investigation, police identified the man as Raita Fukusako, 29 years old. He had previously studied at a university in California, but dropped out. Since then, he had lived a nomadic lifestyle, moving to Hawaii a year before the murder. He had been involved in illegal arms trading, and there were rumors that he had ties to the Japanese Yakuza. Fukusako met Goro while scuba diving, and the two became close friends. He had used Goro's credit card, spending hundreds of thousands of yen. After the murder, he purchased an expensive plane ticket to Japan, raising suspicions that he was trying to flee. Upon learning that he was a suspect, Fukusako, who was now in Japan, voluntarily contacted the Kanagawa prefectural police, claiming that he had nothing to do with the deaths of Kototome and Goro. At this point, Japanese and American law enforcement began a joint investigation into the case. After obtaining a search warrant, the Hawaiian police searched Fukusako's apartment in Honolulu. The apartment was also located on Ala Moana Boulevard, just a 6-minute drive from Kototome's residence. Fukusako lived in Unit 1306, and forensic expert Dr. Henry Lee was invited to assist in the investigation. The landlord stated that the apartment had been furnished with a bed and a sofa. However, when police entered the unit, the sofa was missing. The bed had a pull-out section, and when they opened it, they found that a 6-foot by 8-foot section of carpet had been cut away. Stains were visible on the remaining carpet, though it was unclear whether they were blood. Investigators also found a half-inch long piece of paper with a small drop of blood. DNA analysis confirmed that the blood belonged to Goro. The apartment building had 16 surveillance cameras, and it took 5 days for police to review all the footage, but their efforts led to a key discovery. At 9:27 a.m. on the day of the crime, Fukusako and Goro were seen entering the elevator together, going up to the 13th floor and leaving the elevator. 3.5 hours later, at 12:55 p.m., Fukusako was seen taking the elevator alone, leaving the apartment. Goro was never seen again. Based on this, police believed that Goro had already been murdered by the time Fukusako left the apartment. At 3:54 p.m., Fukusako returned to his apartment. His time away coincided with the time Kototome was killed. Surveillance footage showed that when Fukusako returned to his apartment, he was carrying a visibly stuffed bag, which appeared to contain stolen items from Kototome's residence. At 5:34 p.m., he took the elevator to the ground floor, retrieved a cart, and then returned to the 13th floor. At 9:15 p.m., Fukusako was seen pushing the cart into the elevator, carrying a human-shaped object wrapped in white fabric before heading to the parking garage. Police believed that the wrapped object was Goro's body. At 9:46 p.m., Goro's red sports car was captured on surveillance, leaving the parking garage. In the footage, a white object was visible in the passenger seat, but the image was too blurry to confirm the driver's identity. At 10:30 p.m., the car was discovered burning at the hotel parking lot. Dr. Henry Lee suggested that if the cart had been used to transport the body, it might still contain traces of evidence. After searching the apartment building, police found the cart in the lobby. When examined, bloodstains were found on its base and DNA testing confirmed it belonged to Goro. Elevator surveillance footage from the morning after the murder, at 8:20 a.m., showed Fukusako using the cart to move a sofa into the elevator, taking it down to the basement, and then returning the cart to the lobby. Dr. Henry Lee and the investigation team searched the basement and found the discarded sofa. A section of the seat cushion had been torn away, but bloodstains were discovered on the backrest. DNA confirmed that the blood belonged to Goro. Inside the sofa, police also discovered a bullet, suspected to be the one used to kill Goro, which matched the bullet found in Kototome's body. Ballistics analysis indicated that the bullet was likely from a .357 Magnum or .38 Special, both of which have a 0.357-inch diameter and are manufactured by the same company. Microscopic examination of the bullet markings confirmed that both were fired from the same gun. Additionally, a long strand of hair was recovered from the sofa, and DNA testing identified it as Kototome's. Dr. Henry Lee also examined the victim's clothing using chromatographic analysis. which revealed traces of lighter fluid in the car's rear compartment, confirming that an accelerant had been used to start the fire. All evidence pointed to one suspect, Fukusako. Police concluded that he acted alone, systematically murdering Kototomi and her son one after the other. As the Hawaiian police gathered more evidence, Fukusako, still in Japan, agreed to an interview with the media to provide his explanation. First, he claimed that he had cut the carpet because his cat had accidentally soiled it. If he didn't replace it, his landlord might deduct money from his security deposit, so he cleaned and replaced the carpet, keeping the cutout piece as a sample. Regarding the bloodstains on the carpet, Fukusako explained that both he and Goro were avid divers, so it was normal for them to have minor injuries. As for the driver of Goro's car, Fukusako denied being behind the wheel. He stated that he had only ridden in Goro's car once, but since it was a manual transmission, he didn't know how to drive it. After providing sufficient evidence, Japan agreed to the U.S. extradition request and decided in August 1994 to transfer Fukusako to Hawaii for trial. Before the extradition date, Fukusako repeatedly refused to be transferred, citing deteriorating health. He even petitioned to cancel the extradition, claiming it violated international human rights conventions. His family stated that while in custody, he had lost 44 pounds and developed psychological issues. However, despite these claims, Fukusako could not escape extradition. Before boarding the plane at Narita Airport, he spoke with a determined expression, saying, "It's been a long time. Who even cares anymore?" 1 year after the crime, in February 1995, the trial began at the Honolulu District Court. Fukusako was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. The prosecutor pointed out that the bullets used to kill Kototomi and Goro were the same type. 3 months before the murder, Fukusako had used Goro's credit card to rent several cars. Later, the two had a dispute over debt repayment. Struggling financially, Fukusako attempted to extort $20,000 from Kototomi but failed, leading him to commit premeditated murder. A neighbor of Kototomi testified in court, stating that at around 2:10 p.m. on the day of the murder, he saw an Asian man with black hair walking toward Kototomi's apartment. He initially thought it was Goro and greeted him, but received no response. Since he was not familiar with Asian facial features, he could not confirm the man's exact identity. Another neighbor testified that between 3:30 and 4 p.m., he saw a man wearing a light blue coat and carrying a white bag exiting Kototomi's apartment. Like the previous witness, he initially thought it was Goro, and even called out his name but got no response. Since Goro was usually very friendly and always responded, the unusual behavior stood out. However, the neighbor had vision problems, making it impossible to clearly identify the man's face. A resident in the apartment building also testified, stating that he lived next door to Unit 1306. That evening, between 8 p.m. and 10 p.m., he heard a loud explosion from the living room next door. As a former member of the national shooting team, he was 100% certain that it was a gunshot. Faced with overwhelming evidence, Raita Fukusako admitted to selling Kototomi's jewelry at the pawn shop, but firmly denied committing murder. He claimed that the real culprit was a gang member. According to him, Goro's biological father was actually a wealthy man who hired gang members to kill Kototomi and Goro to prevent Goro from inheriting his fortune. During his statement, Fukusako hesitated multiple times, appearing as if he wanted to speak but then stopping himself. Eventually, he broke into tears and said, "I promised the people pressuring me that I wouldn't say anything. Please don't harm my family." Fukusako refused to provide further details, implying that he was under some form of threat. Regarding the strand of Kototomi's hair found on the sofa, the defense attorney argued that a single strand of hair was meaningless evidence, as it could have been transferred accidentally. As for the motive proposed by the prosecution, which linked the case to an argument 3 months before the murder, the defense claimed that the time gap was too long to prove any direct connection. The defense also presented a surveillance video in court, showing that at 10:33 p.m. on the night of the crime, Fukusako was seen inside a supermarket 1.9 miles away from Goro's burning sports car. He was purchasing bleach, carpet cleaner, air freshener, and other household items. However, Goro's car had already caught fire at 10:30 p.m. If Fukusako had been the one who set the fire, How could he have reached the supermarket 3 kilometers away in just 3 minutes? The police countered this argument, stating that if all traffic lights were green, it was possible. Additionally, the defense argued that Fukusako had been involved in the crime under duress from gang members and had only played a partial role. However, they failed to provide any concrete evidence to support this claim. After 6 months of trial, in August 1995, the Honolulu District Court delivered its verdict. Fukusako was not found guilty of first-degree murder for either charge. However, he was convicted of second-degree murder for both charges and sentenced to life in prison. He would be eligible for parole only after serving at least 30 years. After hearing the sentence, Fukusako turned pale and sobbed uncontrollably. Speaking to the media, he declared, "This is absolutely a wrongful conviction." While many believed that the evidence against him was strong, leading to the conclusion that he was the true murderer, some questioned whether he had only played a partial role rather than being the mastermind. Based on the shape of Goro's facial injuries, some forensic experts speculated that they were caused by the butt of a gun being struck downward. This suggested that the killer was close in height to Goro. Goro was 5 feet 11 inches tall and weighed 198 pounds. Fukusako, on the other hand, was only 5 feet 3 inches tall, meaning there was a nearly 8-inch height difference. Under these circumstances, would Fukusako have been physically capable of overpowering Goro and committing the crime alone? Before the crime occurred, the president of Central Pacific Bank, the person who had received Kototomi's call, made a public statement. He revealed that during the phone conversation, Kototomi had asked him to explain something in Japanese to another person on the call, someone who appeared not to be fluent in Japanese. Fukusako was Japanese. If he had really been with Kototomi at the time, this detail would not make sense. In the courtroom, Kototomi's younger brother sat among the spectators. Observing Fukusako's hesitant demeanor and unnatural body language, combined with the arguments presented by the defense, he began to suspect that there might have been more than one perpetrator. A media outlet attempted to interview employees at the pawn shop where Fukusako had sold Kototomi's jewelry. The staff initially agreed to give an interview the next day, but when the reporters returned, they found the shop doors locked and inaccessible. This sudden change of behavior raised suspicions. In conclusion, this case remains full of unanswered questions. However, due to a lack of conclusive evidence, Fukusako remains in prison, leaving the public to continue speculating about the true events behind the crime. The prosecutor in charge of the case insisted that there was a series of pieces of evidence proving that Fukusako was the culprit. However, to be precise, the only direct evidence linking Fukusako to the crime was the surveillance footage showing him transporting a body in an elevator. Ironically, since both crime scenes were set on fire, the police were unable to collect DNA evidence from anyone other than Fukusako. As a result, he became the sole suspect in the case. A journalist who had been closely following the case persistently exchanged letters with Fukusako. After 20 years in prison, in 2015, the journalist finally secured an interview with him. During the interview, Fukusako made shocking revelations, sharing details that had never been publicly disclosed before. He claimed that the person he transported on the cart was not Goro, but a victim from another case. 2 days before the crime, Kototomi was blackmailed by someone in her profession. Seeking financial assistance, she consulted Fukusako, who worked in investment banking, about securing a loan. Fukusako introduced her to a Korean financier living in Japan, who ran a private lending company. After negotiating with this man, Kototomi received $2 million in counterfeit bills as an emergency measure. However, the Korean financier had one strict condition. The counterfeit money could not be used until after the summer. When Goro returned from Tokyo to Hawaii, he immediately began spending the fake bills, triggering a series of problems and endangering both his and his mother's lives. Kototomi ordered her bodyguard and Fukusako to retrieve the counterfeit bills. They tracked down 3 individuals who had used the fake money and brought them to the apartment. During an argument, the bodyguard killed all 3. To cover up the crime, Fukusako transported one body using the elevator, while the other 2 were taken down the stairs to avoid security cameras. None of them were Goro. Some forensic experts analyzed the surveillance footage. By using the length of the elevator floor tiles, they estimated that the person Fukusako transported was between 4 feet 11 inches and 5 feet 3 inches tall. This did not match Goro's height of 5 feet 11 inches, providing support for Fukusako's new claim. Fukusako continued revealing even more startling information. 2 months after Kototomi and Goro's deaths, in April 1994, something even stranger happened. The Korean financier who provided the counterfeit bills was murdered outside his home. Strangely, the media remained completely silent on the incident, as if a powerful force was suppressing the news. The case was barely reported, and the killer's identity remains unknown. Fukusako believed that everything was connected to Kototomi's notebook. According to him, Kototomi once told others that she always carried a notebook where she recorded all of her predictions about the future, including social changes, stock market fluctuations, and natural disasters. Her exceptional telepathic abilities had once drawn the attention of political and business figures. At the time, Japanese Prime Minister Nobusuke Kishi faced massive public opposition before signing the Japan-US Security Treaty. Unable to make a decision, he consulted Kototomi. After reading the stars, she told him, "Proceed with determination. It will be approved, but your cabinet will not last long." In reality, the treaty was successfully signed, but just 4 days later, Kishi's entire cabinet resigned. Furthermore, many high-profile individuals had secretly sought out Kototomi. Over time, she gained access to many secrets unknown to ordinary people, and she recorded all of them in her notebook. With her death, the notebook also disappeared. Rumors surfaced that the Korean financier was murdered because Kototomi had used the notebook as collateral to obtain the $2 million and that it contained highly sensitive information. Even after 20 years, Fukusako refused to reveal further details, fearing additional charges and worrying for the safety of his family. The new information uncovered by the journalist did not solve the mystery, but instead made the case even more complex and difficult to distinguish between truth and fiction. After the interview, the journalist continued corresponding with Fukusako through letters. Starting in 2017, Fukusako's health began to decline as he battled cancer. In February 2020, he sent a letter to the journalist writing, "Scatter my ashes in the California Ocean," along with other words that sounded like a final will. By 2024, Fukusako stopped responding. At first, people assumed that his condition had worsened, but what happened next shocked everyone. In October 2024, at the Halawa Correctional Facility, located in the outskirts of Honolulu, prison staff discovered Fukusako, 59, lying on the ground, stabbed in the head and neck. He was pronounced dead shortly after. The perpetrator was a 38-year-old inmate from the same cell. A prison spokesperson stated that throughout his nearly 30 years in prison, Fukusako had almost never broken any rules and was well liked by staff. This is truly an unfortunate incident. Further investigation is needed to determine the full details. Fukusako's lawyer, when interviewed, revealed that he requested a full forensic report, but was denied access and was told to wait 6 months. This infuriated him and made him even more convinced that there was something suspicious about the case. Fukusako had been sentenced to life in prison, with eligibility for parole after 30 years. However, just 1 year before reaching that milestone, he was suddenly murdered. The timing was too coincidental, raising serious doubts. How did the cellmate obtain a weapon? Why did he suddenly attack? Was it a personal vendetta, or was he following someone's orders? With Fukusako's death, the mystery surrounding the murder of Kototomi and Goro may never be solved. Some speculate that Fujita Goro, being adopted, might have been Fukusako's biological brother. This could explain why they were so close, but there is no evidence to support this theory. Others believe that Raita Fukusako was a member of an organized crime syndicate, responsible for money laundering, and that he even transferred illegal funds to North Korea from time to time. On the day of the crime, the president of Central Pacific Bank overheard someone on the phone who was not fluent in Japanese, possibly someone from North Korea. A person claiming to be Kototomi's former secretary made a shocking statement. Goro was not adopted. He was Kototomi's biological son. According to this claim, there was once a popular belief in Japan that astrologers would lose their supernatural abilities after giving birth. To maintain her image, Kototomi supposedly lied, saying, "I adopted Fujita Goro." Some conspiracy theorists argue that Fujita Kototomi's missing notebook was the true key to everything. If the contents were ever revealed, the secrets of a powerful figure would be exposed, and that person might have been the real mastermind behind the case. As time passes, the truth grows more obscured, like fog that never lifts. Fate remains unpredictable. The murders of Kototome and Goro resemble a bottomless vortex, swallowing secrets and leaving behind eternal mysteries. Was her death the end or the beginning of something new? What secrets were hidden in that mysterious notebook? Was it power, money, or something even deeper controlling everything behind the scenes? Perhaps behind the glamorous facade of this world, there are always secrets that can never be spoken. What do you think about this mysterious case? Let's discuss it below this video. Goodbye, and see you next time.